so without a formal training, interviewers may inadvertently make inappropriate selection choices by misinterpreting the information they receive from selection interviews. Interviewers must take precautions to ensure that their preconceptions don't overly color their judgment. The first is stereotyping, which involves forming generalized opinions about how people of a given gender, religion, or race appear, think, act, feel, or respond, like presuming that a woman would prefer a desk job over working outdoors. I spent the last year working at Domino's, and while I was interviewing, the manager thought that I would be a good candidate because to get in fights with customers is so common in the store that she thought I'd be capable of handling all the chaos and would have her back if that situation were to arise. She was basically stereotyping me and really did always think I would have her back, but the reality of it was that I've never gotten in a fight with my life, so like I really wouldn't be that person for her. Second is inconsistency in questioning, which is asking different questions of candidates, like only asking Caucasian male candidates to describe their successes on previous jobs. Third is first impression error, which is when the interviewer makes snap judgments and lets his or her first impression, either positive or negative, cloud their entire interview, like giving more credence to the fact that the candidate graduated from the interviewer's alma mater than to the applicant's knowledge, skills, and abilities. Negative emphasis is rejecting a candidate on the basis of a small amount of negative information. Research indicates that interviewers give unfavorable information roughly twice the weight of favorable information, and it happens with subjective factors like dress or nonverbal cues. The fifth is the halo and the horn effect. And the interview allows one strong point that he or she values to highly overshadow all other information. When this works in the candidate's favor, it's called the halo effect. When it's the opposite, it's called the horn effect. Culture and noise is since a candidate wants a job, he or she will provide the words the interviewer wants to hear, even if the words are not entirely true. For an example, like an applicant might say that he or she has no problem reporting to someone younger or working in a team setting when this is not the case. To avoid that, don't have yes or no questions. Nonverbal bias is undue emphasis is placed on nonverbal cues that are unrelated to job performance, such as hair length, distracting mannerisms, loudness or soft voice, or the type of handshake that was given. The contrast effect is strong candidates who interview after week ones may appear even more qualified than they actually are because of the contrast. Note-taking during the interview and a reasonable period of time between interviews may alleviate this. The similar to me error is picking candidates based on personal characteristics that they share with the interviewer rather than job-related criteria. And then confirmation bias is a tendency for humans to seek out information that supports a preconceived belief about the applicant that has been formed prior to the interview. This means that interviewers look to confirm a possibly shallow impression they may have formed of a candidate during the pre-interview process. Affective heuristic is when the interviewer's decisions are influenced by quick and superficial evaluations, none of which are relevant to the candidate's suitability for the role, such as the level of attractiveness of a candidate, race, gender, or background. And then there's anchoring, which is a tendency for interviewers to place an arbitrary anchor of expectation on a candidate, which then influences their evaluation of a candidate. For example, candidates who had a high anchor of expectation were evaluated more favorably than those with a low anchor scale. And the final is intuition, which is a huge part of the other area of the job's candidate fit to the culture and demands of the job. Techniques to eliminate interviewer bias is bring your biases to the conscious level, do the opposite of your typical first impression reaction, treat candidates as consultants. Others include measure first impressions at the end of an interview, hear all of what the interviewee is saying before reaching any conclusions, and to conduct a phone screen first so your impression of what the person looks like does not cloud to see whether they're fit or not. And then the last two are to use evidence, not emotions, to assess a person. And the big one is to wait at least 30 minutes before making any yes or no decisions on whether or not you want to hire the applicant. Next, Jenny's going to discuss the key elements for successful predictors and selection for self-managed teams.
Thank you. Okay, so like she said, I'm going to be talking about the 3 key elements for successful predictors and selection for self-managed teams. So there are three key elements, and the first one's reliability, then validity, then cut scores, and all three of these help predict which applicants will be successful on the job. So the first one is reliability, and reliability is the ability of the selection tool to measure an attribute consistently. An example of this could be an individual that consistently achieves identical scores each time they take a test. The next one I'm going to be talking about is validity, and it refers to how well a scientific test actually measures what it sets out to do, or how well it reflects the reality it claims to represent. Selection methods are valid to the extent that predictors measure or are significantly related to work behavior, job products. So there are three major types of validation used to validate predictors. The first one's content validity, then construct validity, and then criterion-related validity. So the first one, content validity, it's a selection procedure, has content validity if it representatively samples significant parts of a job. This can be as simple as filing tests for a file clerk or a test of cash register operation for a grocery checker. Selection tests that approximate significant aspects of a job are called sample tests. Job sample tests require applicants to perform certain aspects of a job major activities, which demonstrates competent tasks. This increases content validity. Job sample tests should approximate aspects. Instead of directly testing or using other information to predict job success, some selection methods seek to measure the degree to which applicant possesses psychological traits called constructs. These include intelligence. Constructs deemed necessary for successful performance of jobs are inferred from job behaviors and activities as summarized in job descriptions. So they are the job specifications part of the job descriptions. So criterion-related validity is a predictor has this type of validity if a statistically significant relationship can be demonstrated between the predictor and some measure of work behavior or performance. Examples of this are like production rates. Suppose a department store uses a predictor for its sales personnel 1 year of sales experience. To validate this, the employer will have to demonstrate that a relationship exists between the years. And the third type of key element is cut scores, and this differentiates people who pass and the people who fail. Cut scores are used to separate students into categories like advanced, proficient, and needs improvement. So the next topic that I'm going to be talking about is selection for self-managed teams. And self-managed teams work towards goals that are defined by a supervisor outside of the team. They are normally independent, while each individual is normally interdependent. So some characteristics of a successful self-managed team could be that they have a clear purpose, they know what they have to do, and when the deadline is it for, and they have unified commitment, and they have strong relationships. They need to be able to know that they have to work towards a certain goal. Self-managed teams always reduce operating costs because they don't need a higher level paying salary like manager to watch them all the time, and they support risk-taking, increase personal growth, and increase a sense of community. Normally when you're selecting people for a self-managed team, you need to look for certain traits. Like I said before, interdependence is a huge one of them. People on a self-managed team need to trust one another to get each other's tasks completed. They also need to have team problem solving and leadership. So I work at a company called the Protocol Group. We are a staffing agency. I have a huge part in the selection process. We have many companies that we place the people at, and it's like part of my job to narrow down the search of who we place them at these companies. My supervisor doesn't work actually at our location. She goes to a different location, and we just get our responsibilities from her, and we have to work together as a team to accomplish our goals. So today we covered the many steps of the selection process, the interview process, the 6 different types of interviews, interview bias in selection, techniques to eliminate interviewer bias, and the 3 key elements for successful predictors, and selection for self-managed teams. All right, thanks for listening.